been doing Olympic lifting myself for about 10 years or so. And I'll tell you straight up, what takes someone to learn like a few months took me like 2 years. So I think that's why I really like teaching it, is because it took me a long time to learn it. So with that, I'll do a quick introduction just so you know a little bit more about me. I think it's good to know who you're working with and what they're about. And then we'll get into the details of everything. During the presentation, feel free to interrupt whenever. Please make this as informal as possible. No one likes to sit down and be in a formal presentation for a long periods of time. And it's Saturday, so I'm sure you guys are, not wanting to sit down and just be inside all day. So a little bit about me. That's my professional photo. I had them retake it because the first one, I have asymmetrical eyes, and it was very apparent on the first one. And I was like, we're not having that on the website. So that's my second one there. I'm originally from Massachusetts, so about 45 minutes outside of Boston, in a city called Worcester. I put the Puerto Rican flag up there since my family is born and raised Puerto Rico. And if I don't put that up there, they'd probably kill me. Yep. So you know how it is. I love French bulldogs. The first one there is my first dog. He passed away December 2022. His name was Kiko. Best dog, hands down. Best thing ever. Me and my partner got a second French bulldog up there. He was discounted, and he is a terror. But I love him. He's a little asshole. I have several different, my career path has been very interesting. In college, I studied engineering, so I went to MIT to get my bachelor's in chemical engineering. In chemical engineering, I did most of my research in biochemistry world, focusing on like metabolism and all that stuff at a molecular level. During that time, I realized I really liked strength and conditioning, but I was in the wrong school and I wasn't gonna leave junior year to go somewhere and start all over again. So I started doing internships and all that in the college side of things, since Boston has so many opportunities. So with that, I was also in ROTC, graduated and commissioned into the Air Force, where I was active duty full-time for 5 years. Right now, I'm currently Air Force Reserves. I do mostly logistics work in the military, so I currently do that part-time. During my time in the Air Force, I did a lot of private sector, personal training, working with some student athletes, things like that. So I ranged from the general population, like you guys do here, and then some younger athletes. If I were to choose what my favorite type of training is, it's always with, I would say, like the working adult, because I feel like they have more gratitude towards it, and you see they see it's very more appreciative and all that. So that's the type of population I love working with, and I realize that the type of athletes I love working with have the same personality, where they're not the most athletic in the weight room, but they appreciate all those strength gains that they get throughout, versus like a natural athlete who walks in and could power clean 300 pounds. It's like, they take it for granted and they're good at it. It's like anyone could teach them to do that. While I was in the Air Force and all that, I got my master's from Columbia University in management and data analytics. Kind of random, but it tied into my career field in the Air Force, and the Air Force took care of it. So I was like, why not? And the data analytics actually plays into the role that I do at the University of Arizona. So there, I'm a strength and conditioning coach for men's golf, women's triathlon, swimming and diving, and I help out with volleyball. But I also take the role as well as like the sports science person, since we don't have an official sports scientist. Most Power 5, D1 schools and professional leagues have a sports science department, and we do not, and we are way behind the curve with that. So we're taking the initiative of building that program up within our athletics department. So that data analytics that I got in my master's actually tied in perfectly with that. And in the fall, I'll be starting my PhD in physiology at the University of Arizona, so that we can continue building up that sports science department with research that I'll be doing in human performance. So that's all the goal there. And then I also work for an online coaching business. It is CrossFit. I did CrossFit for a little bit. Don't hate me for it, please. Any questions or anything about me? Cool. I figured there would be. All right, so topic today, we already know we're here for Olympic lifting. So I kind of want to take the view of Olympic lifting for how to teach it like students and the teen population, okay? Because it can get very complex. Olympic lifting is very, very technical, so I want you to take the perspective of, hey, this is a tool in my toolbox. I may use it, I may not use it. And I'll talk a little bit about different perspectives coaches may have regarding Olympic lifting. All right, start off, what is Olympic lifting? It's 3 different movements: snatch, clean, and jerk. It is a sport. So it is a sport. If you go to the Olympics, ever watch Olympics, there's an Olympic lifting event, okay? And when you watch an Olympic lifting event, it is a snatch and a clean and jerk happen at once. So you clean the bar and then you jerk it, okay? So that's all one movement. But we usually teach it in 3 separate entities, okay? You'll see the snatch is the overhead, clean is the one with the elbow rotation, and then we got the jerk, which is an overhead of just, pushing it up. And we'll get into all those details, but those are the pictures there. What I want you to realize in those 3 pictures is the mobility requirements for that. Look at how low she's catching that snatch. Her ass is basically touching the ground, okay? The ankle mobility required for that, hips, overhead, okay? Clean, same thing, super low depth. Elbows have to come straight up. If you're working with young athletes, they are, whatever their sport is, there's a lot of repetitive motion. So you're going to see a lot of tightness. So a lot of times when you do mobility tests on these athletes, they're going to have a hard time getting their arms overhead. Ankle mobility. It all depends on what their sport is, what the repetitive movements are, but that's going to play a big role whether they are ready to do Olympic lifting or not. So just keep that in mind. But Olympic lifting, there's pros and cons, just like anything else, right? If you may have discussions of, should I have this person back squat? Well, there's a ton of pros to back squatting, but there's also scenarios where you may not want to back squat someone, right? They may need to be doing something else, and it's the same thing with Olympic lifting. Not every athlete should be Olympic lifting, and you may decide that none of your athletes will be Olympic lifting. Some pros for it is that it's great for developing power, strength, coordination, and mobility, okay? It requires them to go into these really deep positions, and they need to be able to do that, and they need to be able to do that fast. So they need to be very explosive. It requires coordination. They're moving their body around the bar, right? That's very hard to do when you realize some people can't even do this thing, right? Or they can't stand on one leg and you're asking them to pick up heavy weight and wrap themselves around the bar, okay? It's great for teaching the triple extension, and you'll hear that over and over again, right? When you teach athletes, you want to teach them to triple extend their ankles, knees, hips, right? When you jump, you're triple extending. And that's exactly what the Olympic lifting really teaches, the timing and the execution and the power behind that triple extension. We'll talk a little bit about peak force and the time to peak force, which is basically explosiveness and power, right? And that goes into with jumping. The neurological benefits is great, right? Being able to move efficiently around an object, being able to drop fast. So that's a really high reward type of training, whether you're doing the clean, the snatch, the jerk, or all 3 or variation. There's a really high reward, but then there's the other side of it as well, the cons. It's very technical and complex. You can't just tell someone to come in and be like, all right, yeah, we're going to clean. You take it from the floor, and then you wrap your elbows around. Here you go. It's not like that. It's going to take progression and time to teach it. And sometimes if you're training with athletes, with just someone who wants to do Olympic lifting, it's going to require more than 1 hour once or twice a week if they want to actually do this and spend time. And let's say you have an hour session with them, then maybe that hour session is going to be doing a lot of PVC work, which they may find boring in the long run. If they want to do Olympic lifting, it's going to be extremely beneficial, but they may not want to invest that time. It's advanced movements, like I said, it may not be for everyone. It's very easy to cheat, and that depends on who you're working with. One thing we notice working with all these athletes is that they're great compensators, right? They may not be the greatest movers, and you'll see some of the craziest things, and they're still able, like, you'll see some crazy things. Like, I see people being able, with horrible form, clean and jerking like 185 pounds, and there's someone like, just a girl who's 130 pounds, soaking wet, barely has any experience weightlifting, and she's able to rip it and grip it, right? And it's like the craziest thing. You're like, how the hell do they do this? Well, they're great compensators. That's how they are mostly. If you look at a lot of their they're all asymmetrical, most of these athletes, right? Repetitive movement favors one side, but they're very good at cheating the movements because they have a lot of power and natural strength. It's kind of unfair, but you know. It's also a high-risk exercise. Are you guys familiar with Rob Gronkowski, right? So you've noticed that throughout his career, he's always had like a back injury here and there that would reoccur, and they would take him out of games and he'd be pulled out. He actually hurt it initially. The original injury was at the UofA doing a power clean. So high risk. So be aware of who you're using this with. One of the coaches there, he works with the UofA basketball team, high level, high like visibility athletes. He does not mess with Olympic lifts. He's like, not worth it, right? These guys are already athletic. They do a lot of plyometrics. They're already explosive. His goal is to get them stronger, keep them healthy. He also realizes that a lot of these athletes don't stay with him all 4 years because they leave early to get drafted to the to the NBA. Or they enter the transfer portal and leave. So he's like, I don't have 4 years to develop these guys. I got to do what I can with them while I have them. So you don't see them doing any Olympic lifting or barbell stuff like that because he knows his audience. And then another thing to consider, it's a sagittal plane only exercise, right? Just up and down. You're not moving laterally or transverse. So if you're trying to build neurological benefits in other planes of motion and power, it's not really the best option. So you'd have to look somewhere else for that. Anything else you guys can think of in terms of pros or cons? Or any questions? Okay. Here is a jump curve. Joseph, you may remember this during like the virtual thing that we had. Yeah, so this is like a force plate jump curve. Okay, I'm not going to get into details, but one thing that I want to mention is that in this graph, we essentially want this to be super high, this peak here, the peak ground reaction force, to be super high, and we want it to be skinny. So it's this nice, tall peak, right? So that's what the Olympic lifting teaches. It basically will be able to bring this so it's shorter. So that means you're dropping down and extending extremely fast. And the higher the peak force is, the more force that you're going up, which is exactly what we want for our athletes. All right. So we already kind of touched upon this, but I'm curious to think, like, when would you guys include Olympic lifting and when would you not include it in your setting?
I mean, ideally, just based on what you've touched on, if I have taken them through some stuff that they may not even know, but I'm looking for mobility
Yeah.
in their squat depth, in their elbow or shoulder external rotation to make sure they get under the bar, see how they handle a front squat. And then I have a soccer player doing it, and he feels slow, and when I watch him move, he's quick. He's not very quick off the ground.
Yeah.
Slow off the ground. His peak reaction force is not very high.
Yeah.
And we worked on cleans a little bit and like trap bar jumps, and it seems a lot smoother. It feels like he can snap it together.
Yeah.
Quickly. So I've used it with him with just trying to get him to feel like he can recruit much faster.
Right. That motor unit recruitment, you want it to be super fast. You want those muscles to be firing. And that's exactly, you mentioned trap bar jumps. So that's other variations you could potentially do. Let's say you don't have a lot of time with someone to develop power through one of the Olympic lifts. You could do trap bar jumps. You could do dumbbell jumps. You could do different plyometric variations, med ball stuff. It's also safer, right? So things to consider with that. I know, like, I do Olympic lifting with my divers, and one of them had an elbow injury. She could literally do nothing with her elbow for like 6 months leading up to competition. So I had her do like trap bar jumps, safety bar, squat jumps, things like that, since she wasn't able to do cleans or snatches. All right, so like any approach that you would do with whoever you're working with, you're gonna assess where they're at, right? You're gonna test where they're at. I'm looking at strength, I'm looking at mobility, I'm looking at power. And then I'm gonna basically see where they're at and identify the gaps, right? Do they have mobility issues? Are they not strong enough to even be touching a barbell yet? Where are they at and where do they need to be? And kind of see where that gap is and create a plan. That's what you do with everything, right? With everyone who walks in there. You test, see where they're at, where they want to go based on their goals, and how you create a plan. I'll be sending you guys a slide deck too, so you'll have all of this stuff. And I'll also be sending like YouTube videos and all that, like a playlist, so you guys have that as well, so you can reference back. This is an example, like this one was on Instagram, P basal strength. But everyone has different examples of their standards, right? So I just pulled a random table that he posted, and this is his strength standards for his athletes, whether they're a man or woman. And he's like, all right, for chin-ups, for example, woman chin-ups, he wants them to have at least 1 chin-up, and that's okay. And then the goal is to have them do 5, and then great is 10. Okay, so having those standards, and like I have these standards for my teams, and they're all different for each team. Right? Like for triathlon, their numbers are going to look way different, right? Because they're not really strength athletes, so they're going to look way different. And I have standards like this is where I want them to be, like minimum. This is my goal by the end of semester. This is like great if they're already like advanced. And then so I could rank them amongst each other. And I could see like, okay, they're great right now, so that means I can maybe introduce something a little bit more advanced.
Do you know the age range he was targeting with this, or if there are other charts that you're aware of that are actually research-based that go off of age? You know, for someone
Yeah.
50, 60, it's going to look drastically different.
Right. So this is a younger population. I think it was 18 to 26.
Cool.
Other charts I could think of, I'm trying to think who has a few good ones. I'd have to get back to you with like a better...
Schoenfield might.
Yeah, Brad?
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably has some. He's pretty good with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I try to keep my tests pretty easy, right? Like I'm not trying to do like a whole bunch of mobility tests and all that stuff. So the first one I tell an athlete to do, I give them little instruction. All I say is grab the PVC nice and wide, bring it overhead, try to keep your heels down, give me a squat. And I just want to see how they move naturally, right? Usually what you see, like across the board, all sports. You hear my knees? Yeah. So they do this, right? And then I'm like, okay, cool. I make notes, I take videos of all of them. But obviously, as you guys know, what you want to see, PVC nice overhead, heels down, chest up, knees out, control the whole way, okay? And the overhead squat is just easy because it gives you a bunch of things to look at. Thoracic, hips, ankles, overhead mobility. You'll see right away where they're lacking. If you want to get a little bit more in detail, you could do these 3 tests here. The PVC to wall test, okay? So that's the one where you're going up against the wall. So pretend I'm up against the wall. Yeah. Yeah, there's a, oh yeah, just pretend I'm up against the wall. Sitting in crisscross applesauce, palms facing down, your arms in between your knees here. You're gonna bring it all the way up. Okay, if you see any limitation here, that's gonna be thoracic and posterior delt. If I go underhand, going overhead, if you see any difficulty here, then that's gonna be lat focused. They're gonna have some lat immobility. So one thing I want you to focus on too, during this one here, is that they're not flaring out their ribs, right? They're keeping that nice and tight the whole time. So they're not cheating and like really trying to get through by flaring up their ribs. The Thomas test, that's the one where you're sitting down at the edge of a table or maybe even a bench, and you're basically pulling up your legs and kind of seeing the hip flexor there. The knee to wall test, that one's simple, going up against the wall, I'm gonna go nice and close, touch my knee to the wall. Works, good. Inch back a little bit more and see where the point is, where their heel starts coming off from the floor. And that's just to test the ankle. And then you do a strength assessment. You'll see some coaches where athletes go off, summer break. None of the athletes, rarely any of the athletes go and actually work out during the summer. And if they do, they're doing something like on their own off a whim, even though we write them a program over the summer. They'll just do whatever. Like, I know one girl goes off and she does CrossFit and comes back completely like injured everywhere. And I'm like, oh God. So, you know, they come back and they either haven't trained, they've been doing whatever. Some coaches are like, we're doing a one rep max squat and bench. And it's like, that's what some coaches do. I usually do grab a kettlebell that's about 40 to 50% of your body weight. We're gonna do rep out as much as you can with that weight and do the same thing with bench, 40, 50% of body weight. Dumbbells, do a rep out, and then I see where they fall within the standards, okay? Just so I could get a relative idea of a weight relative to the body weight, and it's also pretty safe movements that they're good at doing, versus having them do like a 1 rep max bench or squat after they haven't been doing that for a while. And then a power assessment. I would say if you have something like force plates or jump mats, those are pretty nice. So you could get that data really easily, see a bunch of metrics. But if not, I recommend just a normal vertical jump on a Vertec, or you can even have like where you put chalk in their hand. They stand up next to a wall. They jump, tap, see how far they've touched, and then you could see where they're at in terms of standards, and then a horizontal broad jump, which is pretty easy in terms of setup. Any questions on any of that? All right, now we're gonna get into the actual Olympic lifting stuff. So the first part I'll be talking about the snatch. The snatch is, in my opinion, a little bit more technical, a little bit more difficult for people to grasp, but you'll see different people respond to different things. Some people have a really hard time understanding the clean because of this motion here, so you'll see different people, different things. But the snatch, I think if we cover that first, a lot of it's gonna be covered for the clean, so we don't have to repeat ourselves and just go right into the other stuff. For this, I would recommend a PVC right now, and then eventually we'll grab some barbells. So if you guys wanna grab PVCs, any chance I could get the Wi-Fi password?
Yeah. Anybody know the Wi-Fi password?
Block, capital B, block. Oh, it is all lowercase? Sorry. All lowercase.
Block 2060.
I got fired from this location, so I don't know.
Exclamation, right? Just like Carol when we texted to ask the computer password. I know, I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And then Caroline texted and was like, actually, no. Yeah, it's the only password that doesn't match all the others. But that was the camera password. Yeah, it is. That was helpful because I did that.
All right, so the snatch, I'm gonna show this quick video here. It's a slow motion video. Most of the videos you'll find of like professional Olympic weightlifters, they do it slow motion so you can see all the movement. But this girl here, I think she's 52 or 56 kilogram weight class. So she's not a big girl, and she is doing a snatch of 244 pounds, 242 pounds. So just imagine, right, like how hard it is for people to deadlift that weight. She's doing this at a fast speed, getting it overhead. So just marvel at that feat. It's pretty wild. Right, so this is slow motion, but this happens all within like a second and a half to 2 seconds in real time. Look how low she gets. Stable overhead, arms locked out. It's literally wild. Right? It's just wild. It's like it's a work of art. Like the sport is wild. Like It's pretty crazy to see.
I mean, with core stability to keep yourself in that position and even seeing it in slow motion.
Yeah.
Gnarly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing you'll see. You're going to see a video I posted in here later in one of the slides. It's like of me in like 2015 or 2016 when I was learning. One, it's embarrassing to show in public. I don't think I've ever shown it in public. And then you'll notice like, actually no, it's another video that I put of myself up here. You'll see where like land and I just like completely like crumble under it, right? Because that stability that you're talking about. You have to be really like quick with keeping yourself stable. If not, it's going to be like this weird thing. You're going to dump back. And you'll see that a lot too. People like aren't prepared for the weight. All right. So first thing we're going to talk about is finding that grip, right? How wide should someone go? That's the first step. So there's 3 different ways and they're all really easy. I always go with the hip method, is always easiest, right? So you're standing here, grab the PVC however wide you want, right? So if I just grab it normally, you'll notice it's like about just below your hip crease, like around mid-thigh-ish, okay? I'm gonna keep bringing my arm out until it touches, it's at my hip crease, okay? So now it's at my hip crease. When I bend forward, right, I do like a little RDL here. I notice it's at my hip crease. That's gonna be your snatch grip, okay? So that's it, nice and easy. There's another way called the 90-90 method. So the hip method to me is the easiest. The 90-90 method, you're gonna bring your arms overhead to create a 90 degrees here. Then you're just gonna bring it overhead. That right there is your snatch grip. So exactly, make sure this arm here is parallel to the floor. This one is perpendicular to the ceiling. Okay, bring it overhead. That's your snatch grip. If you notice when you bring it down, it's back at your hip. So that's method number 2. What I find difficult with teaching like a group of, like if you're working with kids, adults, they'll tend to do this, right? So it's hard to get that angle exact. And then the elbow method, not my favorite method. This is the one that's taught by the NSCA. You're gonna go, put this overhead, create 90-degree angles on both sides, right? So your elbows are creating 90 degrees. Come up, that's your snatch grip. Okay. So all 3 of them are pretty similar, right? You get the PVC barbell at your hip. You choose whichever method you find best. I usually always go with the hip method. Another reason I like going with the hip method is because people have different body proportions too, right? So some people may need to go wider, some people are a little narrower. And you can figure that out pretty easily with that. All right, next thing I teach is the grip. How are you gonna grip the bar, right? Normally if you're doing a deadlift, bench, use that overhand grip, right? Just thumb over the fingers, that's the normal grip you use with most lifts. With Olympic lift, we like to do hook grip. So you're gonna wrap your thumb around and then wrap your fingers over your thumb. And it's this aggressive knuckles down. That's the hook grip. You'll hear a lot of people complain about it because it's not comfortable, right? It's the biggest thing you'll hear in complaint, where athletes will be like, ugh, I don't wanna do this. I wanna do whatever. And like, you know, some people will do their Olympic lifts because they absolutely refuse with normal grip, and that's fine. But if you're really trying to teach someone Olympic lifting, like truly, then you're gonna want that hook grip, thumb, and then fingers over the thumb. But they'll get really annoyed because the knurling starts like bothering you here, right? So that's where you'll see when people actually start lifting heavy weights with Olympic lifting, they'll start using tape. So that's something that's very common. Hook grip specifically, why? So if you think about it, you're doing a lift, right? Like let's say I'm doing a snatch. I'm here. That barbell is gonna need to turn over in my hand. I don't want tight forearms. If I have tight forearms and a really tough grip, like I'm death gripping this, that's not gonna turn over nicely. It's gonna hurt. It's a lot of extra tension up in your joints here. Not good for the overhead position. You want it to kind of like roll in your hand and come up. You'll see it especially with the clean when you're here and you catch it with an open hand, okay? It allows that rollover, and it's really nice to just let go. Once you get a hang of it, it's worth the pain that initially caused. Super stable, a lot of core stability there, but her upper body too is doing a lot of the work. So you're looking at the 3 upper body joints here, 6 control points. That's your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders. So think about if you give any little bend in your elbows, that's coming down. If your shoulder blades are not tucked, right, and you let your shoulder blades loose, that's gonna fall down. If your wrists are not stable, that's another one, okay? A lot of times they'll catch it like this, keep a nice stable wrist that way, but that wrist extension could cause pain for some people, so they may be just really sturdy in this position as well. All right, so overhead squat. Once you're done with the overhead squat mobility test, which I mentioned I don't give a lot of instruction for, I go into teaching the overhead squat properly, and I actually give them instruction this time. So that's like one of the first things, right? Because when you're catching, you're gonna wanna know, how do I land? So, feet shoulder width apart. You guys are familiar with the overhead squat, I'm assuming? Yes, no? All right, let's practice it real quick. Just feet shoulder width apart, okay? You're gonna have the PVC bar up. I want you to think about keeping those shoulder blades tucked. That PVC should be slightly behind your neck, okay? Keeping that chest up, knees out, keeping the heels down the whole time, and pushing the knees out. I want you to go down nice and slow. Hold that bottom position for a second or two. Come back up. Back down. Everyone's knees should be crackling like mine. Back up, okay? So I don't know if you noticed anything within yourself, if you found it hard or not. A lot of people do find it difficult because of all the mobility requirements, right? A lot of times, like depending on the days, I can't just walk in and do like an overhead squat cold. Like I'll need to warm up a bit. Today I feel okay besides my knees. But other days it's not gonna work out. So just remember that too. When someone's doing it, make sure you give them a nice good warm up because there is a lot going on there. At the bottom of the squat, look at the heels. Are they staying on the floor? Look at the toes and the knees. Are they in line and are they slightly pushed out? And then look at the lower back, okay? Is it slightly arched? You want to keep a slightly arched lower back, which is different, you'll see, than when we like do the setup for a snatch, where a setup for example, a deadlift, you're not like this, right? You don't want to have a arched back. You kind of keep that nice and stable, neutral, maybe even rounded for like professional powerlifters who can lift really heavy. They're really good at keeping a slightly rounded. That's where this is different, where you do want a slightly arched lower back. All right, now we're going to talk about the catch position, which is the overhead squat, right? So that catch position there. A successful snatch and a successful clean will be two things. It's a fast catch and good barbell acceleration. Those are the two things I write in my little equation there. And fast catching is the hardest skill to teach and for people to learn because it's so fast, it's technical, and it's just not fun, right? It requires a lot of confidence. So think about, you're putting weight overhead. You need to be able to be really fast, confident, stabilize yourself really quick, or else that bar is going to come crashing down. And it's a scary thought, right? It's like if someone's never done handstand walks or anything like that, it's really weird to be inverted. It's a really weird thing, right? Like your brain's just like, nah, I'm not doing this, right? And that's where you have to teach them tumbling and all that. It's the same thing with the overhead squat. You're putting a ton of weight overhead. That's a scary thing. Your brain does not want that. And so you have to be able to be confident in that. You have to be fast. So fast, catch, drop, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm here, let's say I'm doing an overhead squat. Okay, so there's that. And then there's, that was not stable. Let me do that again. Okay, notice how I landed low there. That's a full snatch. So if you're talking to an Olympic weightlifter and you're like, hey, the look at this, blah, 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 this is my snatch. And you're not in a full depth like that, they'll be like, that's not a snatch, that's a power snatch. Okay, so a power snatch is when you don't drop fast enough, but it's still a successful lift. That's not a bad thing. It's just something different. So when I coach my athletes, a lot of times we're not doing full snatches, okay? We're doing power snatches. And what happens when you don't drop fast enough, but you still catch it, and you're landing here, hey, it's not a bad thing. You're just doing a power snatch versus a full squat snatch. So if you're training someone specifically for Olympic lifting, you're gonna want them to squat snatch. If you're training someone for power explosiveness, power snatch will get the job done, and it's less scary. But there's pros and cons to it. So there's this quote, I forgot which coach it was. I don't know if it was Greg Everett, who's an Olympic weightlifting coach, but they said a power snatch is a failed squat snatch. Okay, so just think of it that way. But there are benefits to it. Power snatch, you're catching in a higher position, less skill required because you don't have to drop down as fast, which is good. It's less time during the turnover, right? Because I'm landing here, and so if I land earlier, that means my arms need to be extended, right? Because when you're doing a snatch, you want to land the same time that your arms are extended, right? So I don't want to land and then press. It happens all at the same time. So if I'm landing higher, that's less time for me to extend. If I'm landing lower, I have more time to extend. If I have more time to extend, usually means I could go heavier in weight. Power snatches are usually 85% of your squat snatch. So let's say you have a 100-pound squat snatch. Your power snatch will probably be like 85 pounds or so, so it's less. So just keep that in consideration. That's why Olympic lifters, when they're on the platform performing, that's why you see all of them, like all the pictures and videos I've been showing you, they're super low because they're trying to maximize every pound, every kilogram for their performance. That's their sport, right? For an athlete, they don't really need to do that. Any questions thus far? All right, so we got snatch components. There's 5 things to consider. Each one you need to perfect, or else it's gonna trickle into the rest of the movement, okay? And that's why there's so many things to think about, which is why you have to teach it in pieces a lot of the times. The 5 components is the starting position, the first pull, the second pull, the turnover, and the catch. All right, and like I mentioned, our equation up here, the fast catch, that's where you want to drop really fast and have stable overhead. For barbell acceleration, the second part of the equation, that's where all those components come in. All right, starting position. For the starting position, you want to basically come up, approach the bar. Actually, maybe, do you guys have like light bumper plates? Yeah, that would be good. Just so we could like get into that starting position with the barbell elevated. It helps. So if everyone wants to grab like 10-pound pairs for their barbell, so grab a barbell and 10-pound pairs, and we're just gonna practice that starting position. Ladies, I recommend the female bars, the 15 kilos thinner ones, if we have those available. Sweet.
I have heavy bench too, so I'll stick with lighter. Into this is a power. No, I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm so used to just being so rigid all the time.
Rigid, yeah. Yeah, this is like,
Well, I just
do you deadlift hook grip?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Mixed grip. I don't have very long thumbs.
Okay.
So hook grip is really hard for me.
Yeah.
I've played with it, and sometimes I do it in warm up, like for light stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting like 3 250 and above, we're going.
Yeah, mixed grip. I like mixed grip when I'm deadlifting.
Yeah. It just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hook grip. Yeah.
I get done, they're just like blood red.
Yeah. I have a friend. He's pretty well known in powerlifting. Sean Noriega. I don't know if you've heard of him. But he hook grips for his deadlifts, and it's just like the wildest thing because he's pulling like 750 pounds. And it's just like,
And I think part of it is hand size, right? And so there's a lot
yeah.
of things that you can get. Like my thumb, only my finger can fit over my thumb. I do not have the hand.
Do you mind if I steal that real quick? I'm just gonna roll it over and I'll roll it back to you. Thank you.
It's still not comfortable. Yeah, that's fair. I will give it my best shot.
All right.
Also chalk. Yes. Well, we all know that I have a bag of chalk in
Yeah.
my locker, so.
All right, guys. Oh, sweet. So with the starting position, I always recommend doing a routine, and that's with almost every lift, whether it's Olympic lifting, powerlifting, whatever. You usually have a routine. You don't just go up to the bar and do whatever. It's like, when people are, let's say they're benching, they get their eyes under the bar, they really like pack those shoulder blades and they start benching and they have a little routine going with it. It's the same thing with Olympic lifting. So the first thing I'm gonna tell you is you're gonna approach the bar and you're gonna cut just the top of your toes off. So like somewhere here, right? So you don't wanna go mid-foot like you usually do with most of your lifts. It's gonna be a little bit further back. You're gonna go about shoulder width apart or so. Okay, so I'm approaching the bar, cut just my toes off here. I'm gonna angle out my toes about 10 to 30 degrees or so, depending on your hip mobility, right? So this is all depending on hip mobility. If you need to go wider in stance, narrower, all that stuff. I'm gonna grab hook grip in my snatch grip position. For most people, I'm gonna roll this around real quick. For most people, it's somewhere between the knurlings. So like for me, I already know it's here because I've done it before. I usually know the placement of the barbell. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna grab it here. From here, I'm gonna do that hook grip, snatch it, knuckles down aggressively, okay? I'm going to bring my knees between my elbows. So I'm in this position here. I don't have my knees forward or anything like that. I press it up against my elbows. And I'm going to pack my shoulder blades, open up my chest, and look forward, okay? In terms of where your shoulders should be relative to the bar, if I'm going sideways here, my shoulders should be slightly over my knees, okay? My hips are low, slightly over the knees. You don't want to be in this position here. That's going to be hard to get that there. You're going to have to really hip thrust, and you don't want that. So your hips are low, shoulders over your knees, okay? So you're in this position, open up that chest, no rounded shoulders. Really be aggressive there. You want to be really nice and tight throughout the whole lift. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is practice. Try to pair up so you guys can look at each other, critique each other as you're doing this. And what I want you to do, as you get in your starting position, lift up the barbell, hold it for about 5 seconds, back down, again, back down, 3 reps. Keep that hook grip, knuckles down super aggressively. All right, let's go 3 reps per person, pair up, look at each other, critique each other. You only have to bring it up about an inch or 2 off the floor. We're not getting into the first pull just yet. And in terms of how your feet should be, here's a visual of that when I mentioned just cut your toes off. Good. Look forward. Yeah, chest open. There we go. Look forward the whole time. Good.
wider. Was that your
Yeah,
correct
grip a little wider.
Cool.
Pack the shoulder blades. Like, be really aggressive with this. Good. Look forward. There we go. You want to be looking forward the whole time. If you look back in some of the videos, you'll notice when someone's Olympic lifting, they usually keep their head forward the whole time. Just zone in on something on the wall and stare at it. Push those knees into your elbows in that setup. There we go.
Okay.
I felt that after the first one. Yeah.
Good. And we'll get into the first pull after this so you guys understand the next part, which will be very similar. Nice.
Seems super wide.
It doesn't feel uncomfortable. It feels less comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, Dave would be the one to tell you for sure, but.
I would say, yeah, so what I would say with you, the bar's slightly out. I want it to be a little closer. Right, yeah.
Got it. Like almost touching my knees.
Yeah. Good. And it'll make a little bit more sense on the next part. Good. All right. All right, the next part is going to make a little bit more sense, right? Because I was telling you basically, hey, get into starting position and pull that barbell a little bit off the floor without telling you the instructions for the first pull, right? So now as I'm going to talk about the first pull, it's going to make a little bit more sense what you should be doing. So, we got into starting position. All right, the first pull is basically from the floor to the knees, okay? Can I roll that back over here? I'm just going to keep stealing it and returning it. So it's from the floor to the knees. The one thing I want you to think about and pay attention to, like this guy up here, ignore the first picture because he has a dynamic start, and I'll get into that later, but is the hip and shoulder are moving at the same rate, so your torso angle should not be changing, meaning it's all leg drive. Okay, so I'm going to have you get into that starting position again. Routine, routine, routine. Okay, I'm going to get into that position. I'm here. I'm going to come up. Notice my torso angle is not changing. These are traveling at the same rate. I'm not coming here. I'm not shooting my hips up first. Same rate. Keeping that nice and tight the whole time, looking forward. As you're doing it in your setup position, okay, you're going to come up to just about your knees. I want you to rock back and forth. Maintain, and then find that center of balance. Come back down. Up, back and forth to find that center of balance, and back down. 3 reps, critique each other. Focuses torso angle, staying, even doing like this lightweight technique stuff, start getting like kind of sweaty and all that because you're just basically keeping your body so tight, full body, right? And you're also noticing like all the little things you have to consider. So think about, right now we've talked about the starting position in the first pull. We still haven't talked about the second pull, turnover, catch, and you're all doing this in like a second, thinking about all of it, right? So it's a very, very technique heavy, fast thinking, so there's a lot of muscle memory involved, which is why if someone is truly trying to learn Olympic lifting, they'll be working with a PVC for about a few weeks to a few months. And that, if someone who's used to lifting, right? Let's say like you're a power lifter and you're like, I want to do Olympic lifting now. And then you're working with a fucking PVC pipe. Like you're going to be like, what is happening with me? And then you're scared about losing all your gains and all this stuff. So it could be a mind game. All right. So the second pull, it's right after the first pull. It's up until you get into that triple extension. Okay. So you're in this position, right? Come up. Now this is where a lot of people have trouble with, and I see a lot of stuff going on during this time. During the first pull, common things I see, and this is the first pull, hips rising too fast, right? Losing tension here, the bar coming out. Second pull is people don't know exactly what to do with their torso, with their legs. So you're trying to keep your arms extended for as long as possible. You don't want to bend them too early. You're trying to keep your shoulders over your knees in that bar as long as you can. And you're trying not to hip thrust it forward. What happens a lot? People are here and they go, okay. You don't want to jump forward. You're going to see that a lot, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Another thing people do is this thing, right? Think about you're pulling your shirt up with that barbell. That's the goal. But we're not there yet. We're talking about second pull. So we're here, here. Very simple, get screwed up a lot. Okay, I'm trying to keep my arms extended for as long as possible before it hits my hip. And I'm also trying to keep my shoulders over the bar for as long as possible. If I go too fast here, notice that the contact is not at the hips like I want it to be. And then you're gonna have to use your lower back, and it's a whole thing, okay? So, with the second pull, what I want you to do, actually, I'll talk about this guy now. This guy here, what do you notice about so if I'm talking about the second pull, right? I'm here, and I want to go here. What do you notice about him? His legs are straight, yeah. There's a lot of things going on here, but mostly his legs are straight, right? So it looks more like an RDL, okay? Because his legs are straight, look how far forward his shoulders are. They're a little too far forward. So if he's in this position, what do you think he's going to do now that he has no leg drive and his center of gravity is forward? Thrust, right. That's what you don't want. So remember, you still want this bar to have a vertical trajectory. So you still want to use that leg drive during that pull. So you want to keep those shoulders here, knees, don't extend them too early. Okay? So I want you to first do this, not what he's doing. I want you to first grab a PVC, okay? And I want you to go just from above the knee up. Notice my torso angle is going to change a little bit here. But the goal is I'm keeping my shoulders over that bar for a longer time versus doing an RDL where you're here. Okay? So look at the knees don't extend until later on. And my final position is kind of like in this weird, awkward, like slightly leaning forward.
Should we be doing anything with our elbows, like any sort of rotating to?
Yeah, you want to slightly like externally rotate. Yeah. So, right, squeezing those shoulder blades, keeping that tight the whole time. You still want to keep that bar close to you, so you want to squeeze that. Just do 5 reps or so. Okay, get a feel for that. Starting from above your knees to your hip. Squeeze those shoulder blades, right? You're pulling that bar into you. You don't want it to leave your body.
Are we supposed to be standing up? I'm sorry. Here.
Now there's a lot of parts going on. One thing I want you to focus on is you're not going to fully extend just yet. You're going to keep like a slight, right? And this is called the power position, which we'll talk about later in a later slide. Remember, with those knees, I want you to push them out. Ethan, you do a pretty good job. So if you want to look at Ethan when he does that, notice his knees out. Right, he's not keeping his knees forward. Shoulder blades nice and tight. All right, once you're done there, we'll get into the next part. I'm gonna steal that barbell again. Barbell. Thank you. So what I want you guys to realize so far is, imagine teaching a team of people, right? Like let's say you have student athletes, like you have a student athlete program here, and you're trying to teach a group of kids ranging from 12 to 16, all different backgrounds, how to do Olympic lifting from scratch, right? Start thinking about things like how to progress into these positions, gradual. You also only have an hour with them, right? They probably want to do some other things too because they're kids. So you can't just have, and they should, because you can't just have like a 12-year-old Olympic lifting for a full hour. So things like that, just considering all those things as you, like, if you're planning on working with groups of kids and all different backgrounds. There's all different ways to like approach this, and some people may be at different levels, and how are you going to progress them? What things are you going to consider? How are you going to tailor it? And all those things. All right, so we just did PVC, second pull. Now I want to combine them all together, okay? Start position. Remember that routine? I'm going to come up and do it all nice and slow. Tight, reverse, torso angle changes, keeping that bar close, hold. Remember, right now my shoulder blades are a bit rounded. I want them to be like this. Hold at each position. Floor below the knees, or at the knees, or below the knees, wherever. And then just before that full extension. 3 reps. Now let's combine it all together. Remember, knuckles aggressively to the floor the whole time. Packed shoulder blades. Knees into the elbows, arch back, looking forward, shoulder blades packed, tight torso. So I want you to go from the knees straight into here. Hold at each position for about 3 seconds. Remember that first pull to your knee should be torso angles the same. Good. There you go. Shoulder blades. Yeah. Good, good. I'll have you go on, so then you can go. Okay. Oh, okay, okay, cool. Sweet. I would actually bring your feet a little closer. So it's going to be like a weird thing. Yep. Okay. Good here. Good. See how low you are? Maybe just like a tad bit. That's too high.
A little less. Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Go back down. Okay. I'm going to have my fingers here. Come up. There we go. Okay. Now torso angle will slightly change. There we go. Good. Yeah. Another thing to consider is when you're teaching people, there's probably going to be multiple things going on with their movement that you can fix. Focus on 1 or 2 things, okay? It's hard to fix everything at once. It's very easy to be overwhelmed. Yeah, good, good.
Once you're up,
Oh, yeah. Oh, so this is going to be like, what?
Yeah,
Right?
I can feel the tightness in my,
Yeah.
my shoulder mobility, and I
kind of messed up my feet and was just doing calf raises and all fucking.
Oh, really?
So I'm a little worried about the triple extension.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see.
We'll modify too if we need to. But yeah, when you go, because I did bodybuilding for a bit, and like, you know, bodybuilding is all about like time under tension and stuff, and then now you're doing something fast explosive. It's like the most mind fuck thing. Yeah.
I really want to just because like you're saying with youth athletes, like I want to be able to train them,
Yeah.
be able to do it. So
Exactly.
it's fun.
It's fun. Yours looks pretty good though. Like your movements look good. Yeah, that looks really good. Good. Sweet. And just so you guys, like, it's kind of funny when you go into our weight room, some coaches do Olympic lifting. Some of them are just like, I'm not going to mess with it. But you'll see some coaches when they teach it, like, they'll be like, all right, we're Olympic lifting today. You're going to grab the fucking bar. You're going to start here, and you're going overhead, all right? That's it. And they literally just like go for it. And the volleyball girls are like, you know, there's like, that was the full instruction. So,
You want me to delete that part?
yeah, we'll delete that part. And then you'll see other coaches where like, our coach who works with the track athletes, like the throwers and all that, who the throwers are very well versed in strength and conditioning, right? They're super, super strong. He's really good with like, he's like, I'm going to invest a ton of time teaching this. So you'll see he invests a lot of time in it, and his whole sessions will be like in the fall semester during their off season. He'll take weeks of just teaching all these things. And then you see these kids later on in the spring semester, clean and jerking, 400 pounds, all this stuff, like wild. So it's the investment you put in. But you'll notice different people have different styles and all that stuff. So develop your style is what I would say. All right, so we talked about that guy. Snatch turnover. This is the fun part where you go from triple extension to overhead, okay? And that's where a lot of crazy shit will happen. And you're trying to get that up there. One thing you'll notice, it's up until your power from your hip is transferred into the bar, right? So that's giving the bar power. So you shouldn't be using full arm power to get it up. You shouldn't be using just pure raw strength. You'll see some people do that because they have strength to do that. But what you should feel is a sense of floating. Like this barbell should be slightly floating and not much effort up here. So it's floating, and it's going to reach a certain height. Once it reaches that certain height, your body needs to know, I need to drop around this bar and come down, okay? Obviously, you could just assume the heavier the bar, the lower it's going to come up, right? And that's where people start getting, like their mind gets confused because they're like, all right, I could snatch 100 pounds. I'll try 110. It's not that much heavier, right? All right, I'll put 5 pounds on each side. They're here. The barbell now comes here, and they just can't drop fast enough. And that's where you'll see a lot of people, they'll do this thing where they'll get here, and they'll be like, and they just throw the bar forward. It's going to be very common. And that happens in the turnover. So turnover, you want to be quick and fast during that time. So it usually lasts anywhere from 0.25 to 0.3 seconds for professional athletes. Super, super fast. And even for beginners, it's still less than a second. Okay? And I think I have a quick video here so you could see real time. So you watch some slow motion. So if you blink your eye around the 1 second mark, you'll notice she'll be already squatting. Okay, and I think that one's 233 pounds. So again, just like blink your eye during that time that she like makes hip contact and she'll be like already squatting it. Blink, right? Super fast when that happens. And that's where most of like that power explosiveness we're trying to get out of athletes comes from. Oh, wait. All right. All right. Snatch turnover during this time is also when I don't want to see this. I want to see this. Okay. So one thing I always tell someone is like pretend there's a midget behind you trying to rob you. You're trying to knock that guy out or gal with your elbows, right? So you're here, okay? So you're trying to keep this nice and close. We don't want it S-curve. We don't want that S-curve. We want vertical trajectory. So if like if someone's wearing a t-shirt, you're trying to, which everyone's wearing a t-shirt, you're trying to brush that t-shirt up, okay? So we'll do a PVC snatch turnover. Let me see if I have. Huh? All right, so just nice and slow with the PVC, we'll be standing here. I want you guys to just bring this guy up to the chest. It's nice and slow. Turn over, squeeze shoulder blades, hold, and back down. Same thing. We'll do 3 reps. Okay. I want you guys to focus on just keeping that PVC nice and close, keeping that. Notice as you're turning up what type of grip you're going to be in. Right? You're not going to have full open grip. You still want to grip the bar, but noticing that turnover that happens, flicking it up. Okay. 3 nice slow reps. Squeeze your shoulder blades. Keep this nice and stable. It should be like really aggressive extension of your elbows. It works. Broomsticks, whatever. I know, yeah, you're gonna feel it. I usually feel like, and a lot of my athletes say their traps feel tight when they do a lot of cleans, the snatches, because the shrugging part of it.
Are you supposed to like go into that sort of?
Not yet. We'll get into that.
So just try not to use it.
Slow motion, yeah. Just focus on keeping that nice and close. Once you're done with about 3 reps or so, we're gonna go to the hip snatch balance, where we're gonna speed things up a bit. So you're gonna go here. Again, snatch grip, arms relaxed. I'm gonna go onto my toes. Go as low as you can. Again. Okay. Fall as fast as you can. When you land, yeah, drop it like it's hot, but be stable at the bottom at the same time. Drop it like a hot, but stay stable. So again, you're here. Fall under. I want you to hold this position for about 3 seconds and come back up. Try to go full squat snatch so you can see how it feels.
Can you do it one more time?
Yes. So I'm here. Thinking about keeping that bar close, nice stable at the bottom. Onto your toe. Yeah, this is where the triple extension comes in.
So we start on our toes.
Yeah. Yep. Good. All right. Get into your toes, triple extension. Squeeze shoulder blades. There we go. Yeah. Right now we're combining movements. You need to pull your body under while pressing up. Good. Stable at the bottom. Thinking about keeping that core tight, like you're holding a plank, right? You don't want any... Yeah, I was just about to ask that question. So you guys probably notice, I didn't mention it, but you're starting here, feet slightly close together, or shoulder width apart, right? When you're landing, they come out, all right? When I'm teaching athletes and I'm going through this drill, I do not tell them, I don't give them, I just show them. I'm like, this is what you're doing. Keep it close. If you're dropping fast, stay stable at the bottom. I do not mention anything about feet because that's where they start going like, oh God, feet and this and that. And it naturally happens, right? I didn't tell that to any of you guys, and you guys are all shuffling your feet out to land in that. So, yep. Cool. Any questions or anything about that movement? Good. Sweet. All right. So, a lot of things happen between the first, where the barbell starts, to somewhere between the first and second pull. That's where most mistakes happen, right? And people fail their snatches somewhere between there because they mess up, and then it's hard to recover from that in the turnover. So I'm gonna steal that barbell again. So we're gonna do something called snatch pull. Actually, I don't think I need the barbell. I think I put a video. All right. So usually a snatch pull I use as an accessory part to learn and get better at this movement. So Catalyst Athletics, you'll see some videos up here. Catalyst Athletics is probably, I think, the best resource for Olympic lifting. He's an Olympic lifting coach for a lot of the national level and Olympians and all that stuff. So it's very centered to specific, like if you're doing Olympic lifting, but it's great tutorials, so it's a great resource. And I learned a lot of things from him. So you'll see here, this is a snatch pull. So I want you to see what basically it is. It's kind of like a fast deadlift for snatches. Okay. So what's missing here is the turnover. So you're doing everything but the turnover. You can make this slow or fast. Here they're obviously going fast, right? They're getting into their starting position, first pull, second pull, extend, triple extension, but they're not going into that turnover. So with athletes, as I'm teaching them, right, if someone is already proficient in Olympic lifting, I use snatch pulls as an accessory for them to gain explosiveness and go heavier in weight. For athletes, I'll have them go either PVC or lightweight, super slow. So, for example, I'll have them just do kind of like what we did before. Here, but I have them make them do more fluid movement versus taking a pause. And then I have them go. So again, here. Okay, and they do that with the PVC, lightweight, or anything like that. We won't go over the snatch, we won't go through the snatch pull because we're gonna do something else called the snatch reverse pull. Fancy. All right, and then I put details here of how to program the snatch pull. Okay, so if I'm doing someone who is a specific, let's say, Olympic lifter, they're on an Olympic lifting program, I usually put it as an accessory after their main lifts, and I have them go 110% of their 1 rep max. So if their snatch is 100, then I have them go about 110, so they could feel what that barbell feels like when it's heavier. So once they start progressing in weight, they're not gonna be scared to fall under that bar because they know exactly where it's going to land in terms of the turnover, maximal height, and they'll be prepared to drop, okay? For athletes, it's usually used as a primer. I put it before their main movement. So if we're doing like a snatch block where we're doing like 3 sets of 3, I'll have it part of like their warm up so that they get prepared for that. Lighter weight, probably 75 to 80%. And then I'll have them go into their normal snatches. All right, this is my little apartment gym. I turned my bedroom into a gym. And so here it is. So this is a reverse snatch pull. You're starting from the top in the power position. I'm going down to just above my knees. I'm rocking back and forth to find that center of balance. I'm going to go below my knees, which is the end of the first pull. Center of balance, back down, high pull. Okay, so again, look at that one more time. Starting up here. I'm going to go just above my knees. This is the first part of my second pull, right? And then I'm going to go below my knees, which is the ending of my first pull. Then I'm going to go down to my starting position and back up. What I want you to realize is how my torso angle changes based on what position I'm in, right? Just like, but now we're just reversing it. Where is my mouse? Okay. Where is it? Do you see my, oh, there it is. Okay. So, for example, here you see my torso angle changed a little bit, and now I'm going into the bottom. Torso angle remains the same, and then I'm coming exploding up. Okay? So what I want you guys to do, we're going to do the same thing 3 reps. Okay, so grab a barbell, lightweight. Critique each other. I'll also be walking around. You're going to start from that power position. You're just going to go each part. Now we're going to learn in a little bit more details of things to kind of polish up those movements. That's the power position, the point of contact, which things like we've already kind of touched upon, but just not in as much detail, the timing and the execution. All right, so the power position. This is the position right before you go into triple extension, and it's extremely important to know. And notice in all these 3 pictures, their power positions look kind of different. It all depends on body type, your limb lengths, all that stuff. But you'll notice his is a little bit more upright. I think he popped positive recently. So he's a little, yeah, I know, right? I would have never guessed. Yeah. So his is a little bit more upright. You see she's leaning forward a bit. Hers is upright. So it all depends. But the main thing with the power position, it's right before triple extension. It's at the hip crease. And there's a slight bend in your ankles, hips, knees, and hips, right? So triple extension here. It's like the point right before triple extension. Okay, that's the power position. And you'll see a lot, the reason I mention it is if you start digging into like Olympic lifting things, they'll always refer to the power position and things about the power position. So being familiar with that. And then point of contact, you guys already know, it's around the hip crease. We did that right in the beginning when we found our grip. So it's nothing crazy there. And you'll see it's different with the clean once we talk about that. All right, someone's doing a snatch, right? And you notice that their point of contact isn't where you want it to be, which is the hip. Why would, what are like 1 or 2 reasons you think it may be? Yeah. Yeah, so hand position, right? If this is where they're supposed to be snatching and they're snatching maybe a little bit lower or narrower, it's not gonna hit that hip crease, okay? So that's one. Maybe they're a little bit too wide as well. So that definitely plays a role there. So that's why making sure you know your holding position. Another thing too is arm bend, early arm bend. So if someone's going here and they bend their arm too early, right? I'm already bending it before I triple extend. Now my point of contact is going to be higher or lower depending, okay? So when the arm bends, the power ends. Okay, so there's something called Whiteboard Daily. It's another resource. It has a lot of like drawings and all that. Olympic lifting, you've probably seen like normal movement, like the normal barbell movements and all that stuff. So their diagrams are usually pretty helpful. I have a few of them sprinkled in around here. All right, timing. So we're gonna do something, it's called the ricochet method, and it's something that I learned from one of well-known coach in the Olympic lifting world, and I really like the style of training for teaching people. And it's this is the first part of the ricochet method, but it's called hits and pulls. Okay, so you're gonna go into that power position here. Okay, this is my power position. I'm gonna do 10 light hits with the PVC to my hip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The whole time keeping my shoulder blades nice and tight. Okay, hitting that point there just to create that sensation. So sometimes I'll have athletes do that. I'll go 1, 2, have them do the hits, and then have them go hits, pull, hits, pull, hits, pull. Okay, nice and fast. So we'll do that, do 10 reps of the normal hits, and then do 10 reps, hits, pull, hits, pull. Okay. When you do the hits, pull, you're gonna bring the PVC slightly out and then bring it in. Slightly out, bring it in. Try to go nice and fast, create that sensation. That's where you're gonna hit. Notice he's using a barbell. Do you hear that barbell rattling? That's how Olympic lifts sound when you make the right point of contact, is that rattling noise. So when you're teaching people and it doesn't make that rattling noise, you're like, you should, in your head, be like, are they making that point of contact I want them to? A lot of times when they miss the point of contact, you're not gonna hear that noise. So remember, as you're doing these, I want you to think about shoulder blades, chest out, shoulder blades tucked in, nice and tight. Be really exaggerated with that tucking your shoulder blades in. Yeah. You're keeping it close.
Clearly we've got the bar passed down. I don't even have to hit. Where'd they come from? Makes us far more appreciative for what we do have.
All right, we're gonna do extension next, and this is a weird little drill, but it's just something to kind of teach about the extension part, which some people have a trouble with, right? I don't do Olympic lifting with my triathlon girls, but when I do plyometrics and all that stuff, you'll notice that they have a hard time just jumping and triple extending. When I do force plate testing with them, there's one athlete who goes cannot, it's just not a natural thing for them. So sometimes simple drills like this, they seem so simple, and it's kind of like, I know when I would first coach people, I'd be like, man, it just seems like it should be common sense. I'm not going to do it with them. Like, they're going to feel dumb or whatever. But it's like a lot of people just don't know these things and all that. So doing these simple drills and getting that muscle memory down is going to help in the long run. So this one's called the extension. So I have these all written up out here. So if you refer to it, you have all the instructions for it. But I'll just show you the video part of it. So here, you're just going to bounce about 3 times. On that third